So a little bit about Cisco Meraki. So in 2006, Meraki was a research project at MIT. So MIT had the founders working there as research PhD candidates looking at how to create highly efficient wireless mesh technologies. And they created this great technology, which they presented at a number of conferences. And at one of those were some people from Google. They really liked the technology. They liked the idea of metropolitan wide area Wi-Fi networks that could share internet connectivity. But unfortunately, the product didn't exist. It was just a small Linux PC in the cheapest possible toolbox that could be bought from Walmart. It was really a development project. But this didn't put them off. They offered to buy 1,000 access points and pay up front for them and fund the initial development of the product, both being the first customer and one of the first investors. So the founders created these wireless mesh access points, and they discovered two fundamental things which have become core philosophies in the operation of all Meraki networking infrastructure, which was they had to be really easy to use. So these devices were not being used purely by networking professionals or IT professionals. They're used by a range of people, so enthusiasts at home, businesses, some networking professionals. But what they realized was, as a very small company at that time, they needed to make these products very easy to use. Otherwise, they'd spend a lot of time writing very detailed documentation, having to take a lot of support calls, having to fix things for people where there wasn't actually a problem. It was just that the product was too complex to use, which is a very typical issue in our industry. That's the IT and networking world. So one of the core philosophies from the very beginning is that the products must be very easy and simple to use. If we can take something out of the configuration or out of the interface to automate it or simplify it for you, so you spend more time making the network do what you want rather than spending time configuring it, we will aim to do that. The other core philosophy that they came up with was the products had to be very easy to control and remotely manage without being physically there. So when you have wireless mesh devices, these could be on the tops of buildings, on tops of lampposts, in different areas of the world, or even just on different floors of the same building. And if you had to physically go there, if management technology to connect to them was really complicated, then that would make life very hard. So the Meraki philosophy is about incredibly easy to use remote management, and from the very beginning all of our devices have been cloud managed, and that is a highly scalable, highly distributed software system operated by Meraki for the management and control of all of the Meraki networking devices, which means we can eliminate all the things you typically understand as a way of managing your network. So no SSH, no Telnet, no FTP, no BootP, no TFTP, all of these protocols and complicated ways of doing things to the point where we don't have a CLI, a command line interface, and no serial port to connect to the device. It's all managed from the cloud, and where we can automate things, we will do that for you. So this was very, very popular, and the company grew 100% year on year. And not only looking at wireless mesh, we started creating more powerful devices suitable for education, K-12, higher education, enterprise, local government. And we thought, well, this is so popular, so successful in terms of a concept. Why don't we apply this to other products as well? This is just not valid for wireless networking. This is valid for other areas such as enterprise security, so that's unified threat management, devices which can do content filtering, traffic shaping, firewalling, link load balancing, as well as switches. So access and aggregation switches where you're connecting lots of devices, servers, or access points, or maybe even phones. You want that to be really easy to manage as well. And then finally, to complete that whole stack, so to give you end-to-end control and manageability using this easy Meraki philosophy, we have mobile device management as well. And all of these are configured, managed, and operated from our cloud infrastructure, and you interact with that through something called Dashboard, which is the management interface for the Meraki cloud. And that's what you can see in the screenshot to the right of my slides, which we'll be going through in more detail later on. Now, in 2012, December 2012, Cisco acquired Meraki for $1.2 billion. And this was a really important acquisition. It was a very large acquisition. It was one of the largest acquisition, the second largest acquisition of a private company in 2012, both for Cisco and for Meraki. For Meraki, it was a stamp of approval from the industry leader in networking that cloud managed was the future. It's here to stay. It is a huge growth market and something that really resonates with customers that want to just have things that work and not spend a lot of time bothered on configuration. They need to make it work so that users can use the system. And from a Meraki perspective, it gave us a huge growth opportunity. We can now sell into so many different countries. We can offer the technology through all the partners and the technical expertise within the Cisco community. And from Cisco's point of view, it wasn't a pure technology acquisition. It was also an understanding of the culture changes within the technology world. Meraki is a very lean, agile organization with highly integrated teams, a very sort of dynamic workforce culture. And so rather than integrating the different parts of Meraki into Cisco as a whole, we form a totally separate group known as the CNG, or Cloud Networking Group, and we have a specialist innovation center in San Francisco where we're all located developing all these new products. Since the acquisition, we're still growing incredibly quickly, over 100% annual year-on-year growth, and we're the fastest growing business unit in Cisco still 2 years later on. So the ease of use, this remote management, this is really, really important for education, especially in K-12, but it's the visibility, and we'll go into the visibility a bit later on, and then how you use that to implement controls that is also incredibly useful. You don't have time as a multi-talented IT team that has to do things from maybe printers to networks to servers to iPads. You don't have time to sit down and read a ton of documentation on each individual one. You want to be able to just get what you want done and to not spend hours learning how to do that. And so we've seen a huge uptake in education being one of the largest areas for Meraki deployments because of the ease of use, the management, and hopefully some of the other things we're going to hear about later on from the Bryan deployment. So it's all very well talking about cloud, but what does this mean? As a technologist, I'm somewhat bored of the word cloud because it can be used to describe many different things without any particular detail. So I'd like to just spend 1 or 2 minutes to explain what that means in a Meraki context. So as I said slightly earlier on, it's a highly scalable, highly distributed software platform for the management and control of all of your Meraki devices. It's not a server. It's not an appliance, it's not a virtual machine, it's not something you can install or have in your data center or your comms room. This is operated globally across multiple data centers by Cisco for all our customers. And that means you get some huge benefits. You get huge scalable benefits. So there's no controller that you get to the limit of. You don't find out you suddenly need to buy a bigger one, or you need to buy a second one to have HA, or you bought 2 bigger ones and you've wasted money which you could have spent on access points. In essence, it's unlimited in terms of its throughput and its capacity. Nothing in this world is really unlimited. We're managing that for you behind the scenes. In the same way that as you upload a new video to YouTube, you don't have to worry about the storage of the server that YouTube is putting your video on. You just keep adding stuff and somehow Google works it all out for you. You're not concerned with that anymore. And this means you don't have all this extra physical infrastructure that you need to operate it, but you don't really care about. So you don't have to pay the electricity costs, the cooling costs, the physical storage costs, maintenance costs. All of those things are removed. And you can start with 1 AP, and you can go to 10, 1,000, or 10,000 access points or switches with no additional components required other than buying the additional devices themselves. And this means you can deploy them very quickly. So you can take a device, can send it to site, and you can get up and running in a matter of minutes. And a great example of this is the Meraki app. So we have an app that works on iOS and Android, and you can take this app to manage your network, but also to deploy it. So you can take a switch, or you can take an access point, and you can scan the barcode off the back of it using the camera on your mobile device, and it will automatically configure it and install it into the network that you want it to be used in. This makes it really easy, really quick, and reduces the chance of error when you're deploying it. Now, there's obviously concerns with cloud around reliability. So, okay, we've got rid of all of these things. That's great. What happens if they're not available? What happens if the cloud goes down? What happens if we can't access it? Well, the cloud is built highly available in the same way that other next-generation web services such as Facebook, Gmail, LinkedIn are, for example. And we have multiple servers with multiple resilient pieces of hardware in multiple data centers across the world. So the resiliency of that infrastructure, we offer 99.9 99.99% uptime SLA, and it's very unlikely that you're going to experience an interruption with the cloud service based on how the infrastructure is running. What's more likely is the fact that your WAN connection goes down, so you can't actually then talk to the cloud infrastructure. The concern is then, what happens to my network? Does it keep working? And the answer is yes, it does. So all the devices operate by having their configuration locally, but just managed from the cloud. And we'll go through that on the security side of things. So the devices keep operating. There will be storing statistics which they can upload back to the cloud when connectivity is returned, but they will keep working. Now, there are some caveats. So if you pick a service, and we offer some extra services in the cloud, so for example, if you don't have a Radius server, but you would like one, we can offer that for you in the cloud. Now, if you can't get to that, then you're not going to be able to do user authentication. But that doesn't stop you from having a local authentication service. So if you have your own server, your own Active Directory server, your own Radius server on site, which is quite common because they already have all your user information in, then the devices will just talk locally to that, even if the cloud is down. So going on to the security side of things, and this feeds into that reliability side and how things keep working even when they can't talk to the cloud. The reason we can do this is because no user traffic goes into the cloud infrastructure. So only management data and that type of information, the analytics of how the network is operating, goes into the cloud. It doesn't have any of the user traffic, the forwarding, going through the cloud at all. This is really important because otherwise we wouldn't be able to scale. We can't process petabytes of data that our customers are sending over their LAN through a WAN connection over the cloud. That's just not possible. And it allows us to scale. But it also means that we can meet the security requirements of numerous different customer types. So for example, in the healthcare industry, we can meet HIPAA compliance. That's to ensure that sensitive patient data doesn't go into untrusted environments. And also in the retail world, for example, with PCI compliance, retailers are very concerned about the loss of credit card information and the possible consequences of that, which can be incredibly costly indeed. So we're able to manage all of this, both secure, scalable, and reliable. And if you want further information about the security, you can visit meraki.cisco.com/trust. So why choose Meraki for the K-12 environment? Well, hopefully you're starting to see some of the things that could be of interest to you in terms of the philosophy around the product development. So this intuitive centralized management doesn't require any training. So we don't have any specific training courses that you can go on as a customer. Our philosophy is, if you require training on this, we haven't made it easy enough for you to use, and we'll go away and we'll work out how to make that easier. And the great thing about doing that is this is highly scalable. So if we run a training course, we can educate 8 people. But if we fix something so it's easier to use, that's not fixed for just those 8 people, it's fixed for everyone, which is really an amazing benefit of cloud technology in terms of being able to update our products and the infrastructure very simply and easily. There's no complex command line. You don't need to go and carry a serial cable in your bag anymore and your USB adapter to serial, because no one's laptops has serial on them anymore. I got rid of that a long time ago. It's really a much better way of doing things. And it's not just switches, it's not just access points, it's not just security appliances, it's all integrated into one interface. And this is a huge benefit because not only can you very quickly go between the different platforms, so when you're troubleshooting, you want to look at the end device, and that end device is connected to an access point, so you want to look at that, and that access point is connected to a switch, so you want to go look at the switch port, and that switch is connected to an aggregation switch, so you want to look at that switch, and then it's connected to a WAN connection. All that process of troubleshooting, looking at the connectivity and viewing the configuration is all in one interface, one login, and beyond that, it all has a similar look and feel. So once you've sort of got to understand how the interface works for one product, you really are almost an expert on all of the products. And this includes the MDM as well. So you can see from the client all the way through the network out to the WAN access as well. So we call this the full stack solution. That's where we have access points, switches, security, and mobile device management all in one go. Now, I am going to have a brief pause because I've seen Tanya's written up some questions, and I do want to make this an interactive webinar. It is much more fun for both everyone online and for me. So we have a question here. Is the data configuration sent to the cloud encrypted? Yes, that's a good question. Yes, we have a TLS encrypted link to the cloud. It's known as the Meraki tunnel, or M tunnel, and this link requires a very small amount of data. So thanks for this question, because you reminded me that I should have talked about about this, and that is we require, on average, 1 kilobit per second per Meraki network device to operate them remotely from the cloud. So if you have 100 access points, you need to allocate 100 kilobits per second of WAN bandwidth on average to manage these devices. So you don't need to be concerned about someone intercepting either the analytics or the configuration information or password information that may be going between the cloud infrastructure and our access points. There's a question about, do Meraki access points work with other manufacturers' security appliances, switches, or firewalls? And the answer is, of course. So these devices can all work together, so AP switches, security appliances, and MDM, but they don't have to. They're all industry standard compliant, as long as you have an Ethernet switch, as long as you have a security appliance that does IP routing and allows connectivity out to the internet and has standard firewall rules, then yes, you can go ahead and do that. This is not a problem. So thank you very much for those questions. Please send any further questions over to Tanya, and we'll go through them as we go through. So let's have a look at a couple of the other points that are suitable for users in a K-12 environment. So the flexibility of the deployment is also very important. So you want to make changes because you can never work out, first of all, what it's going to be like day one. You can configure it, everyone uses it, and you realize actually a ton of stuff needs to be changed. Well, you can very quickly change that because the configuration is very simple to do. We also have all these troubleshooting tools such as packet capture and a cable testing tool, which allows you to work out what's going on. And I had a couple of great examples, one from a college that I went to, and they used the cable testing tool to work out that they had been missold the cabling infrastructure by their vendor. The cable runs were greater than the 100 meters allowed by the Ethernet standard, and so they could use this information to tell the vendor that they had not met their contract. They had put in cable runs that were too long because they hadn't put in enough wiring closets and so on. So that type of visibility was really important to them. And this industry-leading visibility and control, we're going to go through this with Brandon shortly when we talk about how you look at all that information in the dashboard and then how you can use that to do things such as traffic shaping firewall rules, implementing SIPA-compliant content filtering. So with that, I would very much like to introduce Brandon McCord, Network Manager from Bryan Independent School District. Brandon, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we're now going to move on to the slide. Tell me a bit more about the Bryan Independent School District. We've got a couple of figures and facts on this slide, but it'd be great to hear a bit more from yourself.
Absolutely. We're a 5A school district located in Texas. We have 30 different locations where we house students at. We've got about 16,000 students and roughly 4,000 faculty and staff members, and my group is responsible for all things infrastructure related. However, there's just 3 of us who manage the wired and wireless networking.
That sounds like a real load. How do you manage it with just 3 people?
We're really with Meraki, you just set it up and forget it. That's not a scripted line. I mean, it's pretty easy, basic. You get on the cloud, you configure the switches you want, you put them in the network they need to go to. You configure the access rules that you need, you configure the plans that you need on them, and you really don't go back and touch them.
So how long would you think it normally takes you to get a switch up and running that's a Meraki switch? Is it much faster than what you had before?
I would say on average before, even with using like pre-configured templates on our Cisco switches, it would still take us about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get those up and running, probably an hour sometimes. With Meraki, you set them up while you're checking the trunk ports on the other switches. They finish updating, you get in there, and really if you've done your homework and configured a template on the Meraki cloud, you can really push most of that stuff down, configure the VLANs, you're out of there in 15 minutes or less.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty good time saving when you've got a lot of switches. So let's move on to the next slide. So give us a bit more detail about the move to Meraki. I see that your access points were near the end of life, so you wanted to move to a newer standard, maybe 802.11n?
Well, you really touched on a lot of those. For us, our access points were older. They were a Cisco version. We were plenty happy with them. However, as we started to bring in our BYOD initiative and we started to need more high-density areas, better visibility, more input as to how much bandwidth is being used over the network, we reached out to most of the Meraki kind of came upon us. We had a sales guy, who I can't think of his name at the moment, came in and dropped an access point off, kind of gave me a quick spill. I explained to him I really didn't have time at the moment. I was pretty swamped under getting everything else going. So he gave us a couple access points with a year license and asked me, hey, if you do decide to use it, please email me know what you think. A few months later, I had time to get around to it. We fell in love with it. We initially deployed it at our technology department, and it was a success right away. Kind of with all the visibility you can see from the cloud and what all users are using, how much bandwidth each user has, what they can access, what they can't access. It was really a no-brainer for us to make that push the whole way out. There's no cost in a controller, so we're not heating and cooling the equipment.
So did you have controllers in your previous setup, which you've now replaced? Or in fact, eliminated, not replaced?
We did, actually. Due to our size, we had 7 different controllers that we would have to manage, and most of those would have needed to been replaced or upgraded in order for us to move to another solution.
Great. So the switches need to be refreshed as well. Was that driven by the new access points? Did you need like PoE or something like that, or were they just coming to their end of life as well, and it happened to be something that was going to be done at the same time?
Most of our switches were older. They were either inline power that didn't offer the 802.3 AF standard, or they didn't have power at all. And so just with technology evolving and more devices being put on the network, security cameras needing power, access points needing power, phones needing power, it just kind of seemed like a simple solution for us to go ahead and pursue that line and move on to a full PoE deployment.
And so did you try the Meraki switches with the access points, or did that sort of follow on after you'd tested the access points and liked them?
We started purchasing the switches after we had almost a complete deployment of Meraki within the district. We had continued to purchase our standard 3560 PoE switches, and we reached out to Meraki. They showed us their product. A few things that kind of did for us was it gave us visibility over the actual local area network, and so that was a huge input for us as to how much bandwidth we would need to purchase, kind of what was our projection in the future. And so that's really what had drove us to move with Meraki. Also, we had software where we needed to run SNMP monitoring and find out what the switches are, what their uptime is, if they've gone down. And Meraki kind of met all of those needs for us in one solution.
So how would you compare like your previous management solution compared to how you use the Meraki dashboard? Was there a significant difference in terms of what you got between the more traditional SP management way of doing things and the Meraki dashboard?
Oh, absolutely. You would need to go between several different applications to get all the information. You have to run Wireshark to find information, bring a cable tester out to see if it's a cable issue or if it's a switch issue or if it's a client issue. There's just a world of difference between what Meraki has brought to us versus our previous vendors.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's move on and talk a little more specifically about the access points and how you're using Wi-Fi to support the learning environment. Can you tell me about the multiple SSIDs you have running and what the sort of uses for those are?
Absolutely. Well, we have one SSID that is for our staff and faculty, and that's our main SSID that we use in-house, and that SSID can access the majority of our network and send traffic where it needs to go. Our previous director wanted to bring in bring your own device and have that as a successful deployment, and so we created a second SSID known as My Instructional Technology, and that's for students and guests. And we use firewall and access rules to prevent any kind of traffic we don't want on the network. We also use that same to allow certain traffic that the kids or guests would need to access. And in doing so, we use Meraki DHCP, so we don't even manage DHCP leases on those. Just roll it out, kids sign on with an acceptable use policy, they get an IP address, they're able to get out to the web. Doesn't affect the content filtering, it doesn't affect safety for the kids.
So, I mean, for those of the listeners on the call who are maybe less familiar with Meraki DHCP than I am, could you give us like a brief overview of what that does? Like, sort of why it's been really useful for you?
Absolutely. Well, beforehand, when we were on our old wireless system, we had to actually run secondary VLAN and access control policies in order to keep that traffic off of our network. In the event a guest came in and wanted to do something malicious, well, we couldn't just allow them to bounce all over our network. So we needed to go through and create complicated access control lists and make sure that traffic was only flowing in a single direction and that it was where they needed to be. With Meraki DHCP, you enable that feature, and it basically allows no traffic from that SSID and Meraki DHCP to get on your network except for specific sites that you have allowed. And so we have internal ticketing system and an internal site where teachers can go and create tests and different things for the kids to do. And so with Meraki DHCP, you can allow those places specifically and allow individuals to get on.
And so how did you manage BYOD before your Meraki deployment? Was that something that you could support, or has it only been possible since the revamp of the network infrastructure?
It's only been possible since a revamp. We had it deployed before, but it just wasn't a sustainable solution for us with all the access control policies and different things that changed internally with applications and kind of what the need for the kids was. It just wasn't sustainable for us.
And we talked about the time savings on the switches, but there's some time savings to be had on adding new access points. From my personal experience, I think adding the access points is even easier than the switches. I mean, what sort of time would you set aside to get an access point deployed? Is it even quicker than the switches?
Oh, absolutely. You select the network you want it on, you use your phone to add it to that network, and you plug it into a PoE port and walk away. That's it.
So I mean, how many minutes would you say that would take you?
5 minutes to actually hang the access point in total, maybe another 3 minutes to walk halfway across the building to plug it in. That's it.
That sounds pretty good. So you've got state testing that's now all online, and this wasn't possible without Meraki. Can you give me a bit of detail about how that was enabled?
Absolutely. With just the number of bodies that we house, the number of devices we have traversing our network, we didn't really have high density areas where we could get a lot of users on and then be effective and have good bandwidth. With Meraki, that has been the point for us that's been so successful. Is just the access points are great. They're, depending on what flavor of access point you get, you can do different stuff with it, and they just they allow more users to connect.
And so what access points do you have at the moment? I think you have 802.11n access points. Is that right?
We have the 16s, the 34s, and a couple of the 72s. And a couple
okay, so you have a whole mix of different access points there. Is there a specific reason for that, or is it just the points in time that you decided to buy them allowed you to choose different models?
Some of it had to do with the point in time in which we bought them. The 34s went out when we really made our first purchase. This last round, we just decided to do 34s all over the place because we can actually set the radio within the AP to be aware of all the access points around it and throttle its power down based on how it sees the rest of the access points. Also, the 34s offered air marshal, and that was something that really helped us with troubleshooting Wi-Fi issues. And so
yeah, so for those listening who may not be aware of the differences, all the current generation of Meraki access points, including this MR34 that we're talking about, have a dedicated third radio, which allows you to do air marshal, which is this wireless intrusion detection and prevention, in real time without it impacting the performance of the network, because it's not having to use the radios. It talks to the client devices such as iPads and laptops to do all those features as well, and it gives this really detailed view as to the sort of the RF environment of your network. So we have that on like the MR34, our highest 802.11 AC access point, and it was such a good feature that's now available on all the Meraki access points that we sell. So something that we saw a lot of benefit in, and thanks for the feedback there, Brandon. So let's have a little look at the switches, and I think we've actually covered a number of these talking about it earlier on in terms of the just general ease of use of the Meraki configuration. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight that we haven't covered off here that you think is of relevance to people considering an upgrade to their switch deployment, or how to manage a switch infrastructure in an education setting?
No, sir. I think you're covering it.
Great stuff. Well, the last one that I'd probably just have a look at there is all-inclusive features nature of dashboard, because I think this is something that within the industry is not necessarily that common, whereby we're used to buying feature licenses and extra licenses for something to do this, and I don't want to make the mistake, I know I've done this in the past, of asking my boss, okay, I want to buy this, and this is the licenses we need, and we get the purchase order and we buy it, and I realize I actually missed out the license that I really needed. Was that something that was a benefit to you in terms of the cost savings? There's sort of simple licensing model where one license gets you everything in the Meraki world.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. So let's have a talk about your future plans. So I see you're in the process of finishing your MS Switch deployment. How's that going? Do you just have a few more sites to refresh, or is it just a matter of budget that's allowing you to deploy these when and where?
No, actually, given this last year, we're doing a complete forklift of all of our campuses. We'll be 100% Meraki in every location, every switch, all with the same MS 220 for our regulated switch, and then 320s for a lot of our cores, and 420s for some of our larger campuses.
Great. So for those who may not be aware, the MS220 is our sort of layer 2 feature switch. The MS320 is layer 3 switch, which also includes 10 gig uplinks. So you get 4 10 gig uplinks. And the MS420 is the really high performance 48 port 10 gig or 24 port 10 gig fiber switch. So makes a great aggregation or small core if you need to bring in fiber from your wiring closets. I see you're planning to move to Meraki MX security appliances when it's time for a network refresh of your firewalls or security appliances at the moment. What's driven you to consider the Meraki MX as a device to use in that environment?
Given the visibility that we currently have with our network and our Meraki deployment, it seemed like the next logical step was to go ahead and get that at our edge at the firewall where our WAN connection comes in, and just to be able to better manage that and see what users are coming in and out and kind of how they are accessing the network.
Okay, and I guess the sort of final component of the Meraki full stack is the mobile device management with Systems Manager, and you're looking to incorporate these for Google Chromebooks for students. Do you think this is going to be an important thing in the future to manage all your devices?
Absolutely. Well, with that solution, we're able to manage the device as a device instead of we're also Google Apps for Education, and so right now with Chromebooks, we would need to manage that as a user basis instead of a device basis. And with the MDM solution, it gives us the ability to manage it as a device and not for an individual user.
And do you think it's an important component of that MDM that it's in the same interface as the rest of your Meraki devices? It's not a separate login?
Oh, absolutely. It is the same login. You go to this place, one pane of glass directs you through the wireless, the switching, the security, the MDM solution. We're able to give that to our PC tech side. They're able to see kind of what the end users are, what they're experiencing, and with the MDM solution, it'll just make their job that much easier managing the devices.
Fantastic. So I was having a chat with Tanya, and she says one of the favorite things that you've talked about from Meraki is the Make-A-Wish feature. Tell us a bit more about that.
I said in one of the webinars before, and I think a guy named David had talked to me about the Make-A-Wish feature and kind of how that worked. And I think it's a great feature that Meraki has that a lot of people don't have. You have complaints over, well, I wish this did this, or I wish this did that, and at least with Meraki, they actually give you a place, and somebody will really get back to you. They will see that ticket that doesn't just fall upon deaf ears. And so, for somebody who's down in the trenches every day and dealing with the equipment and dealing with the network and user complaints, that's a great feature to know that somebody actually reads that and responds back. It's not just a canned response, that your wish may actually get answered. So.
I'm going to have to ask, have you had a wish granted?
I have not yet, but usually my wishes get answered by the time I get ready to type them in there. They're like, oh, well, this is going to be released in the next feature. Just wait for an update here in a day or two, and you'll have it.
So we're sort of preemptively thinking about what you're after. I mean, for those who are on the line, I can expand a little more on the Make-A-Wish from the Meraki side of things. And this box that says "I wish this page would" with a click button is on every single page of the Meraki dashboard interface. And its purpose is to allow customers and people using the products every day who are down in the trenches, as it were, to give us direct feedback that isn't translated in any way. So I think you can imagine how if you tell a salesperson that you wish this product had a certain feature, and then they tell a systems engineer who tells like a product manager, who tells an engineering manager, who then tells the person who actually makes the feature, there's a lot of possibility for that to be, for the original reason that you wanted that to be lost in translation, and for that to not get made, or for it to be, the way I like to put it is you ask for a pink telephone and you get a yellow banana at the end of it because it's been translated along the way. And the purpose of this is to allow the engineers to get direct feedback from the people using it. So this box, when you fill it in, goes to the singular person or the small team who made the thing you're currently looking at. And so they see this directly every day. They have a special way of looking at all of these wishes coming in, and they can look at ones that are on a common theme or have a similar trend. And they have plasma screens in their little sort of development areas which have these lists coming in live, so you can see the wishes coming in on the screen, and then they use that as feedback as to how to improve the product. And I've seen some wishes get granted in a very short space of time. It's obviously one of those things where if you ask for something very complicated, then it may not be possible to make it. It may take a long time, but some very simple things such as like a small change to the user interface to make it easier to use, I've seen happen in literally a couple of days. And the beauty is we don't guarantee we'll give you any feedback. If you have a problem, then you should raise a support case. But that allows us to take wishes from everyone because there's very little overhead in us listening to your request. So it's a really fun feature and something I really like as well. So with that, I think we're going to have a brief pause for some questions. I see Tanya's got some questions coming in. So Brandon, let me have a look at what questions are coming in, and if you're okay, we will go through those. So I've got a question about authentication methods for the different SSIDs you're using. The question is, what authentication methods are you using and why have you chosen those?
Currently, we're using a pre-shared key for both of the, for the main network. We put those on our devices when they're imaged out. We have a lot of Macs in our district. We're primary 90% Mac district, and so with that Mac solution, we're able to push those out, and the user never even ends up having to type a key in on that. Either the machine is imaged with that key in there, or one of our guys on the other side who manages the Mac side of it can push that out to the end user's device. We have looked at the radius authentication, and we've also looked at a couple different things, and I think we're getting ready to deploy those. I'm just not quite sure which route we're going to go yet. So.
Okay, thank you. We have a question about, are you using the dashboard for any form of asset management in terms of the devices that you have?
Absolutely. If you click on the Meraki web, on the login page, you can get in there and you can actually see a list of your inventory. That shows you the serial number of the device, when it was joined to the network, all kinds of good information. Within our notes, we also have asset inventory tags on all of the devices, and so if you click on the notes section of our interface, you can see this is in this closet. Below this switch, this is uplink, and this is its asset tag. And so we definitely use that for inventory.
I guess one of the nice things to add about the Meraki app, which we've both discussed in terms of deploying things, is you can actually use the GPS coordinates of the device to tag the location of the AP or the switch. So the coordinates off your phone, you can just press sort of tag and it puts it on the map. And then in addition, you can take a mounting photo. So you can use the camera to take a photo. That access point is behind this ceiling tile. You take that and it stores it into the interface as well, which I'm super pleased with because that's one of the features that I wished for and my wish came true. So I really like that one. Let me just see if we've got any other questions in here. So a few questions about Systems Manager. What we'll do, I think, is if we go and have a quick demo of your network, we'll just have a talk about some of the things you have configured and what it all looks like in the Meraki dashboard, and then we'll sort of wrap up. So if everyone stays on the line, there's just going to be a brief pause while I switch to the Meraki dashboard, and then we'll carry on. Okay, so I shall start sharing my screen. Okay, so Brandon, we're looking at one of your networks with a whole host of access points in here. I mean, can you tell us anything like particularly specific about this network? I mean, you seem to have quite a lot of access points. I think we're in this Silver Campus network here, and you also have a mixture of access points with an outdoor one there that seems to be named for tennis.
Absolutely, and actually, this is only half of the campus. This is just the silver side of one of our high schools. Within this, you can see the switch that it's uplinked into, whether it's a Meraki switch, which will be indicated in green, or a Cisco switch, which is indicated in black. The model of it, MR16, its uplink connection, what port is being used, whether it's been downshifted to 100 meg, which is that orange guy that's on there. The rest of them are all either 100 meg. Some of those that are in darker green, I think, are gig that's in there, and then how many ports are available left in it. You can click on that and kind of see what the device plugged into it is.
Oh, okay, so yeah, in here we can see like the list of access points, and I think this is the great thing about having products which are all connected to this one management platform is we clicked on an access point, which has taken us to the switch, and then I could go back from this switch by clicking on one of these access points, and that will take us back into the access point. So we're just seamlessly sort of traversing between those two different platforms without having to log into anything else separately. So let's have a look at some of the visibility that we talked about. So to my mind, the interesting page is this clients page. Tell us a bit more about how you use the client page to see how the network's operating and, for example, to look at the statistics about the applications that are on the network.
Absolutely. When you click on the clients page, you can see all the clients that those access points can see or that have joined those access points throughout the day. You can see the IP address that they connected and when they last were connected, how much bandwidth they used, what their OS is, what their current IP address is, which is handed off of DHCP, and then if their policy is normal or not. We actually do use the policy. There's been some individuals who have come into our campuses and have done some inappropriate things, and so they get blacklisted or put into a different group policy in order for them to either access the network or not access the network. And so with this, that gives us total user management of the device. We can see who's getting on our network when they're getting on and how much bandwidth they're using, what they're doing while they're there. Just loads of visibility through one pane of glass.
Let's have a look at, because I know we had questions about how people configure authentication methods. Let's go and have a look at that in here. So for those following along, we've gone into our wireless section and we've gone to look at access control. So this is where you can configure the individual connection methods for the SSIDs. And I can see in here, this is one way using the pre-shared key. And this has the more traditional connection type directly to the LAN. So this SSID, we're not using the bridge mode.
Yeah, we are. This is for our staff members, so it is in bridge mode, and that dumps them right onto our local area network, where they traverse and go from campus to campus, or campus out to the internet, or campus to an internal resource. If you'll change to the MIT network, which is the My Instructional Technology,
Okay.
you'll see in there that we actually have a splash page where users come in. There is no pre-shared key. There is no anything. They click on an acceptable use policy. They agree to the terms that we're giving them. And this network is significantly more locked down. We can control where they go, how much bandwidth they get, if they have band steering turned on or not, which will push them from 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, or if they're a legacy device, we'll put them on 2.4. All kinds of great features for our bring your own device network.
And I can see we've got this click-through splash page, so I brought up an example of it here, and this is the one that I can see you're using. It's pretty easy to configure from my personal experience. How did you find it when you were configuring the splash page? Because you don't need a web server because it's all hosted in the cloud for you.
Oh, right, yeah, it took us maybe 10 minutes to get that up and going in total. And because it's for a network and an SSID, we're able to copy that across all of our campuses. So it wasn't that I had to do it at this campus and then another campus. It just rolls for the entire district.
Oh, so you only had to do it once then?
Correct, and then you just copy that network and its settings over to the other ones.
Great stuff. So let's have a quick look at the switches then before we start to wrap up, because I can see we're coming to the end of the hour. And so I've just clicked another network. It's the same. I believe we're on the same campus here, and I'm straight into the switches. Again, we could have gone through the access points as we did before, but now I have a table that looks very similar, almost identical, in fact, to the access point table, and we have all this data on the switches here. Do you use some of the reporting tools to understand how your switches are being used at all, Brandon?
Absolutely. I have a supervisor who receives a report over that, and that gives them a breakdown over kind of what they see on the network, what users are doing what, who the highest user is, what, again, what they're doing.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've recently added in the last month or so in terms of features to this reporting is the ability to see how much power is being used. So if you want to understand the power implications in terms of cost, we've got this new Ethernet power section in the summary reporting, as well as being able to see how many ports you've used out of all the switches that you have deployed. So a great way of looking at the efficiency of the deployment, or maybe you need to buy new switches, or maybe you have enough ports left to use. So with that, I think the last thing that we'll probably do is I'm just going to switch to the Meraki corporate network. The reason to do that is we do have the systems manager set up already. So I just want to have a quick cover of the MDM. So Brandon, thank you very much for allowing us to showcase your network and for giving us a few stories. If you could stay on the line a couple more minutes, I think we have some questions coming in that I'd love to go through at the end. But let's just have a brief look at the MDM before we carry on. So the MDM, known as Systems Manager, supports numerous types of platforms. So we support iOS, so that's iPods, iPhones, iPads, as well as Android, so your Samsung Android devices, your Nexus, Google devices, and so on, along with Windows Desktop, Windows Mobile, Chrome OS, and Mac OS X. And if we want to look at that, again, it's just in that same interface, we have the Meraki Systems Manager as a drop-down within the Meraki dashboard. And here I have a huge list. I'll give you a second to try and take in all that information of the devices under management within the Meraki Corporation. Now, say I wanted to look at an iPad, I can go in here, I can type iPad. This will show me all the iPads, and I can go in and say I can pick Keith's iPad here, and this will allow me to see where they are, various details about the device. But let's pick, based on our lack of time for the amount of things we need to go through in the remaining few minutes, some of the features that I'm particularly interested in. So you can erase or selectively wipe a device should it get lost or stolen. And we also have this fantastic single app mode. So this allows you to limit a particular application on the device, so it can only have that one thing used. And we have a set of teacher assistant functionality, so it's like having a teacher's assistant in your classroom who knows all about the iPads. They can set, as a teacher, the entire class to only use one app, and then they can change it to another app when they want to, or they can pick a particular student and go to AirPlay, and then AirPlay Keith's iPad here to the Mathematics Apple TV, so it can be projected onto the screen. So really easy and straightforward, and the important thing is you can use limited access roles to set teachers to only be able to do this to their class based on their schedules. You don't want to be doing that where they could set the whole school's iPads to a single app by mistake, so protecting them from themselves there, because it is very powerful. Now, with Systems Manager, you can also integrate with VPP and device enrollment programs, so let's just have a very brief look at that. With the volume purchasing program, you can buy many apps and then redeem those licenses and push them onto devices as and when you need them. So a very brief introduction. I would highly recommend you have a quick look at Systems Manager. There is no cost for you to use it if you have less than 100 devices, so you can get demoing it and give it a go without any risk at all. So let's head back to my slides here, and we will have a quick review of the product families. So we have talked about the access points, so they're both indoor and outdoor. And we have 802.11n to 802.11ac at both the lower end cost and the very high performance, slightly more expensive variety. We have Ethernet switches, Layer 2, Layer 3, fiber, PoE, whole variety. One of my favorites is the 8-port switch. That's because it comes with PoE Plus if you want, and it's completely silent. And it has a mounting kit built in. You can stick it under a desk, you can screw it to a wall, it can be in a classroom, and it's not going to disturb anyone, which is really, really useful feature. When you only have a limited cable drop into the classroom, you can just put one of these in and really expand your connectivity options. We have the MX security appliance with a whole host of features such as content filtering, traffic shaping, firewalling, and so on, and the MDM that we've just had a look at. Now, Meraki is E-rate eligible, so you can get 100% E-rate eligibility on the access points, switches, and security appliances, as well as on the licenses for both the MR, MS, and MX, and then a 50% E-rate eligible on the MX Advanced Security license. Unfortunately, Systems Manager is not E-rate eligible, but we do have very aggressive pricing for education customers that do wish to make the use of the MDM. We do have an exclusive K-12 offer for those who are interested in buying a 5-year Cisco Meraki license. So the way it works is you buy a Meraki device, plus you buy a license for the device for a period of time, and we have very good discounts if you wish to buy it for a 5-year term. This is generally a good period of time to consider, because it's probably the lifetime you would expect out of your deployment for wireless access points, for example. In 5 years' time, I don't know what standards we're going to be looking at, but they're probably going to be some much faster newer ones that we'd want to go through there. So what are the next steps? Well, the next steps on this webinar following this slide are for me to review any questions and to thank Brandon once again for joining us. But for you, I would highly recommend trying out the products yourself. You can see if all this ease of use that we've been talking about really is true, and you can do that with an evaluation. This is a zero-cost evaluation. We'll ship you the devices you want. You choose the ones you want to try. You try them. If you don't want them, we will come and pick them up for you. We pay the shipping, so you don't even have to pay to ship them back to us. The second thing I recommend is to visit our blog, meraki.cisco.com/blog. This is the most up-to-date news platform from Meraki. I highly recommend you subscribe. There's lots of good updates around MDM, how to set up Teacher's Assistant, how you can use it to manage classrooms, lots of things on there and guides on what to do. And then you can obviously give us a call, meraki.cisco.com/contact. Find out directly from us all the answers to your questions if for some reason we weren't able to go through them on today's call. So that's the end of the slides. Let's review any last questions that come through. Brandon, a question from you, sorry, not from you, for you. How difficult was the upgrade in terms of getting approval from your school board? How did you convince them that Meraki was what you needed to deploy?
I feel like it was pretty easy, given the cost, the quotes we had received from other vendors to come out and do the same solution, and knowing that that was a need already for us. I think it was budgeted for a few years in advance, and we did the homework on it, and then once we got the prices back on all of it, it just seemed like the way to go. There was significantly more cost savings involved with joining Meraki and not having to buy controllers and not having to worry about the upgrades of everything than it was with any other we looked at.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us on today's call. We are at the end of our time for today's webinar. If you do have any more questions, please give us a call. And thank you very much for attending today's session.